Let me say this slowly, because if you rush past it, you're gonna miss it. Most people are not stuck because life is hard. No, they are stuck because they are loyal to a version of themselves that no longer exists. And that loyalty that they have, it feels very noble. It feels like self acceptance, if like an identity, okay? But underneath, it is basically just fear dressed as consistency. Now, there is one mindset that quietly suffocates your growth. One belief that just subtly, so subtle that you don't even notice it is tightening around your life. And it sounds like this, okay? It sounds like this. This is who I am. Not loudly, not confidently, just the usual whisper. Like a tired agreement with your own limitations. Like, this is just who I am. And when that sentence settles inside of you, you stop evolving, okay? And it is not because you can't anymore, but because you have decided that you just shouldn't evolve. Here's the dark part that no one likes to confront, okay? You don't protect your identity because it is true. You protect it because it is something familiar to you. So even if it's dysfunctional, even if it's, self-sabotaging and is slowly draining you, you choose the cage that you recognize over the freedom that you don't understand. And we call that comfort. So listen carefully. Your language. Stop it. Listen carefully to your inner language. The invisible script that runs your life, okay? The usual that goes, that's just who I am. Or the, I've always been like this. Or have you heard the one where they say, people don't change, Or the, this is just my personality. This is how I am, period. I'm gonna shoot all those down and say no, because that is your survival pattern speaking to you, okay? It's a personality that is built around protection, a character that has been molded around past wounds, and a mask that has been designed to keep you safe and not actually help you grow. Okay? And what's even more dangerous is you start confusing your coping mechanism as your true self. You know, the the guardedness becomes somewhat a strength to you, and the emotional distance becomes independence. And the control starts to become discipline. But deep down, you know the difference, okay? You know. You just don't like what is asking of you. Because growth requires the death of the familiar, And the ego just hates funerals. So let me be honest with you, okay? Sometimes the reason that you don't change isn't because you don't know how to. It's because changing would expose the lie that you have been living through. The lie that says, this version of me is permanent. It is who I am. This is how I am, and blah, blah, blah. No, it was necessary, not permanent. There is a clear difference. There comes a point when your old identity starts to feel heavy. Like you're wearing an armor to sleep. Like you're trying to defend a territory that doesn't actually need protection anymore. But what you do is, instead of listening to that discomfort, you try to justify it. You intellectualize it. You romanticize it. You turn it into this personality traits, and slowly you start living as a reaction rather than a choice. And here's where it gets uncomfortable, okay? Some of you are not afraid of failure. You are just afraid of who you'd become if you actually healed. Because then who are you without the struggle, you know? Who are you without the story, without the identity that you have built around pain? Pain has been your compass for so long that peace just feels so unfamiliar and almost suspicious. So, what do? You start sabotaging it without even realizing. This mindset doesn't scream, it whispers, okay? It keeps you predictable, it keeps you restrained, it keeps you small enough to remain recognizable. And every time that you try to grow, it gently reminds you, don't forget who you are. But what if who you are is exactly what needs to change? Breaking this mindset, it's not about motivation, and it's not about forced transformation or becoming some ideal version of yourself. No, it's it's about awareness so sharp that it becomes uncomfortable. It starts when you pause before you react to something, or when you catch yourself defending a limitation. When you notice the fear behind the identity, and instead of saying, this is just who I am, you ask, who taught me to say it this way? Okay. Why am I still obeying that script? There is power in that pause that you do, because in that moment of silence, it creates a space. And in that space, you see the bars of the cage, the rules that you never chose. You see the traits that you've adopted to survive, and the beliefs that protect you, then, but instead imprisons you now. Growth is not loud, okay? It's quiet, it's confronting, it's uncomfortable. It's the slow, terrifying realization that the version of you that once kept you alive is now keeping you stagnant. And letting go of it, it feels like betrayal. It feels like you're betraying yourself. But sometimes betraying your old self is the only way that you can honor your true one. You are not who you learned to become under pressure, nor are you your coping response or your defense mechanism or your conditioning. You are what remains when awareness enters the room. And that version is far more dangerous to stagnation than comfort would like to admit. So if you feel resistance right now, good, because that is your identity shaking. That is your ego gripping on tighter. That is your old self scared of becoming irrelevant. But don't silence it. Observe it, okay? Because the moment that you start seeing it clearly, it loses control. Let me leave you with this, okay? The most destructive mindset is not negativity or self-doubt or fear. It's the quiet belief that you are already fully defined. Because once you believe that, you stop questioning. And when you stop questioning, you stop growing. So don't ask yourself, how do I change? No. Start asking, what version of me am I still protecting? Who would I like to become if I finally stopped obeying that identity? You don't need to answer it today, okay? Just sit with it, feel the discomfort, notice the silence, because growth doesn't begin with action, okay? It begins with awareness. And that awareness is the first crack in every psychological prison. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding a version of yourself that was built to survive, not for truth. And not for truth. And when you finally let it go, you don't become a weaker person. You become uncontrollable. Not because, you dominate others. No, it's because you are no longer owned by who you used to be. And that in itself is where real growth begins. Now, if you like the video, I'm going to end it here. If you like the video, give it a like and subscribe, and I'll be seeing you in my next one.